Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and as always, I'm very excited to be here with you today. And I really am very excited today specifically because I have a special presentation for you today. As you all know, I work with people who experience chronic stress, right? That's the core of my work right now. Of course, as we've spent 680 some odd episodes here, not just talking about chronic stress, right? Because as we get into these practices and as the practices of mindfulness and compassion and self-compassion and kindness, and as we cultivate the skills that these practices provide us, we realize that chronic stress is just the very, very beginning of the benefits that these practices offer us, right? The thing is, though, that the chronic stress is usually the most important thing in our lives. If we're experiencing chronic stress, it is the most important thing to address, right? Because before you can get into sort of feelings of life satisfaction that come from these practices, and that is absolutely something that comes from these practices, before we can get into that, we have to first regulate the stress. We have to get to a place where we're no longer, stuck in this self-perpetuating state of hyper-arousal or hypo-arousal, as we talk about, and agitation and angst and all the things that are associated with chronic stress, as well as, of course, the coping mechanisms that we, turn to for chronic stress, right? Which are almost always called maladaptive coping mechanisms because things like drinking alcohol in excess, smoking cigarettes in excess, workaholism, overeating, sex addiction, there's lots and lots of different things that we do, these so-called maladaptive coping mechanisms to ease the weight and the pain that comes from daily chronic stress. But the problem is that these coping mechanisms wind up causing problems of their own, right? They wind up in a lot of cases, the damage caused by something like smoking or excessive drinking alcohol or recreational drug use, can sometimes be worse than the original stress, the damage from the original stress, right? So that is also a very big part of it is to get to a place where we no longer need to cling and to lean on those maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? And then healing can start to happen, and that's where once we start getting past those coping mechanisms, and we start to regulate our body, and we start to find a little bit of health and well-being, both mentally and physically, that's when we start to taste the sweet nectar of life that we never knew was there before. And I'm living proof. I mean, I spent decades of my life thinking that this is what it was, just this daily grind and this stress and just this feeling of surviving every day was my life. And I thought that's just as good as it got. But I'm laughing now because it was so wrong. I had no idea what I was capable of. And that's really the essence of this work, is that it gives you the power. It empowers you to do what you are capable of. And all of you are capable of so much. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to translate into capability of productivity or profitability, although if that's your thing, then go for that too. But we're talking about the capabilities of just, living a good life, we could say, right? The capabilities of being, connected and happy moment by moment. That in and of itself is such an enormous feat. And so what we talk about here on this podcast and YouTube channel is the practices, or are the practices that get us to this place. Right? Again, first and foremost is relieving the stress and learning to live without the coping mechanisms. And then the evolution of this work is just so beautiful, as I have hundreds of people who could attest to this. Who I've watched over years now, 3-4 years, I've watched people, just become something that they weren't the first time that we talked. And it's not that they became something they weren't, it's they allowed themselves to come through. They allowed themselves to be themselves. And it's really amazing. So anyway, as I say, today, this week, we have a very I have a very special, I don't know why I say we, it's like I have a whole staff here. I don't, it's just me. I can't even get my kids to help me with this stuff, but no, it's just me. And I have a special presentation for you today. A few years ago, I was lucky enough to have hooked up and gotten connected through some of the outreach I was doing for my work. I got connected with a firefighter. He's actually an EM. He had been on the fire truck and then switched over to the EMT for the fire service. And working with him gave me a really amazing insight into the life that these amazing men and women live in order to be there for us when we need them, right? And you have to understand that firefighter, EMS, and the same is true for police and emergency room workers, who I have also had the pleasure of working with since the gentleman with the fire service. And the thing is with all these people, right? You and I think of like, okay, we got to go to work, do our job, and kind of get through. These people, the work that they do, is literally every single call, every single run that they have. When the alarm sounds and they go out there, they're greeting someone in their absolute worst possible, the worst time of their entire lives. Right. And they're seeing things, and they're dealing with things, and they're managing situations that most of us, you and I, have no idea have no idea what it could even be like. And so in and of itself, that is like, holy smokes, man, these people, I mean, you talk about stress. Wow. And yes, the fireman, he found me through the webinar that I used to run every Sunday night for over a year. I ran a webinar called How to Tame Stress and Eliminate Reactivity in Less Than 8 Weeks. It was a basic mindfulness presentation for stress, of course, but that's how, that was what lured this person in, because can you imagine the level of stress that is in that? I mean, most of us can't. Most of us literally cannot even imagine it. We can imagine something, but how close we're going to be to what these people, these fine men and women, deal with on a day-to-day basis. And again, it's not just like the worst day that you could ever have in your life is all day, every day for those folks, right? Every day, every shift. That's what it is, potentially. And so you can imagine, and now there's also, the sort of, I was talking to another firefighter out here in Denver not too long ago, actually shortly after, I guess, I worked with the guy I was telling you about. And he told me something that was really enlightening and really, very fascinating, but also like, just made me, just feel the most compassion and concern that I've ever felt for another human being. He told me that the most stressful shifts are the slower shifts. Right? Because it's not only just, screaming in an ambulance or a fire engine to get to this, horrible scene, which is stressful in and of itself, of course. But just think that as you're sitting there, playing cards or something in the firehouse, trying to quote unquote relax, before the next run happens, the reality is that your nervous system, as somebody who's in that field, for years, right? And even for a couple of weeks, your nervous system is going to get the idea that that alarm can go off at any second. There's no warning. There's no schedule to it. There's no, there's nothing to prepare one. It just goes. Now that alone, even if you have a shift where you have one run, right? That could be the most stressful thing for your body, because your body is anticipating that extreme pressure that's about to come at any given second, any instant it could happen. So So when you look at things like this, right? When I look at things like this, and I've been thinking a lot about this, is that who could need more this work of mindfulness and self compassion, than these wonderful men and women of the fire service and the emergency services, whether it's an emergency room worker, a police responder, an ambulance EMT, emergency medical technician for all of you who aren't here in America, or a firefighter. Right? I mean, prison, corrections officers also, right? I mean, the work that these people do every single day and here's the thing, and this is why this is a special episode really for these people, but I think it's very interesting, and I think all of our regular listeners are going to benefit from this and enjoy this and maybe learn something, okay? But the thing that I want to impress upon you, right, is that the stress that must be involved with, and in fact I know, right, that the stress that is involved with these kinds of lines of work, again, emergency room, any hospital setting really, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, all of these fields that people are in, there's a special source of stress, as I've just explained, right? Because there's also not the kind of stress where, if you're having a bad day at work, let's all face it, like we can all sort of drag our heels sometimes at work, right? We can be like, okay, I'm not having it today. I don't have it in me today to do it, really go 100%. So I'm going to, sandbag it a little bit, right? We all do it. You can't do that when someone's life is on the line. They can't do that for themselves, right? They feel a drive towards this work, which means that there's like sort of a boundary, right? And that's what I wanted to talk about here, is this sort of boundary. And it's not just the boundary of like, yeah, I can't just say, okay, I'll hit the snooze button on the fire alarm, or I'll just kind of hang back and let the other guys take care of this one. Nothing happens like that. You can't do that in these situations. But the other sort of boundary that these folks are facing is the boundary that, well, I'm calling it a boundary, but the reality is that for most of us, right, most of us who don't have these jobs in, firefighter, EMT, correction officers, emergency room, police officers, right, those of us who are not in these emergency services, these first responder roles, we have lots and lots of natural resources that we can turn to help with our stress. Right? We have a lot of options that are just not available to these first responders and emergency workers. And so this is an episode that goes right out to these people, right? Because I'm here to help. And I want to, first of all, any of you out here watching this episode who are first responders, welcome to the family, welcome. And we really appreciate you being here. We really appreciate the work you do. I speak for everyone. and if I'm not speaking for you, then maybe you're not in the right group here. But the way that what this podcast is all about, we honor you and we thank you and we want for you to be well. We want you to be happy. We want you to be free from suffering. And so I'm going to talk about a few of these sort of, aspects of your life, your day-to-day, work life that is so much different, and the ways in which your work life precludes certain natural remedies for chronic stress. And the reason I'm telling you this is because even though you don't have access to these natural remedies, which most people squander, they don't really use them, but you don't even have these, but it's not to say that it's all bad news here, okay? Because there are things that you can do moment by moment to help to reduce that stress, to help to, reclaim your regulation and your, ability to be present with what's going on and turn down the story in the mind a little bit and regulate this stress and then learn to moment by moment, do things to keep the stress at a certain bay, right? You're never going to keep it completely at bay, but you can, as John Kabat-Zinn says, we can't stop the waves. You can't stop the stress or the stressors, but we can learn how to surf. And that's what I have to offer you here, okay? Surfing lessons. Surfing lessons for when you're in the ambulance, you're on the fire engine, you're in the police car, you're in the emergency room, when all the whole world is exploding, okay? This is what I'm offering to you, all right? All right, so I have here 4 different aspects of life that are ways in which most people can alleviate some of their stress, which is not available to the first responder. Okay, so the first thing is feeling safe. Right, one of the first things that I do with my students and my clients, right, is I get them to recognize that, because most people, when they're experiencing chronic stress, and this is true for first responders as well, even though you do have a very physically and actively stressful job, there's also this aspect of chronic stress, which includes the story that we're telling ourselves, right, about our experience. And this is the first thing we need to address, right? Because this is the low-hanging fruit of the stress reduction, right? And what the practices that I teach, help in that quest for stress reduction, right? But anyway, the first thing that I usually work with people on, when people are, if somebody's an accountant and experiencing chronic stress, then that means that most of the time when the accountant is sitting at his or her desk, looking at a spreadsheet, their mind is somewhere else. Their mind is thinking and telling them a story about how dangerous things are and how much trouble they're in and how catastrophizing everything is going to be. Right. And so the first thing we do is say, okay, now just remember that you're sitting at your desk and you're safe right now. Well, I got news for all of you. And not the first responders. They're not going to find this enlightening at all. But for all of you others, they're not safe. Right? When they're screaming down a road in an ambulance or a fire truck, that is not a safe environment. And so that is already something that does not, apply, right? That's already like one strike against, right? Now, there are ways to help yourself feel safer or feel as safe as you possibly can, right? And there are certainly times where it is safe, right? Like, so for instance, while you are sitting in the firehouse and yes, your body is tensing up every minute, thinking that alarm is going to sound any second, right? But in this moment, the alarm is not sounding. Okay. And there's ways that we can work to alleviate that tension building of the nervous system. Okay. That's in the wheelhouse of mindfulness. That is an automatically included benefit. Okay, so it's not to say, but it's also important to recognize, though, that for most people, there's a lot more safety. Okay, so anyway, and part of what this work does, what this work is about, is being honest and being really facing things and noticing, right, and accepting what is real. And so sometimes that means that, you might have the feeling like you're never safe, which is not true, but it's also not true to say that you're always safe, right? So it's about finding the reality and being with that reality. Now, again, this is a skill. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but all of the practices that I'm talking about here and all of the functionality, these are skills. And skills are developed through practice. There's nothing mystical about it. There's nothing magical about it. There's nothing that you were either born with it or you weren't, and tough luck, if you weren't and all that. None of that applies. This is like riding a bike. Anyone can learn to ride a bike, and anyone can get good at riding a bike as long as they apply the practice to riding the bike. Same thing with these exercises. Okay? All right, so the next thing, sleep. One of the most important things to not necessarily to relieve stress, but to give ourselves the resources to manage stress to the best of our ability, right? Well, if it's going to overwhelm us, it's going to overwhelm us a little less if we can get, regular, predictable, and restorative sleep. Now, this is a catch-22 for most people with chronic stress. I'm not going to, let's be honest with that here. Most people with chronic stress have a real difficulty sleeping because of the chronic stress, right? When they lay down on the pillow, and I can speak for myself, for years this was true for me, that when I lay down on the pillow at night, that's when all the different, conflicts and all the different struggles and all different fears and all different concerns, all that was made up by myself, most of it, come to life. And then you're just staring at the ceiling for 3-4 hours, just like, oh my gosh, I can't, just lost in it, right? Well, for the first responders and for everyone else here listening, there are things that we can do to help ourselves fall asleep more quickly, but also to sleep more deeply and with more restoration. Now, here's the thing. Mindfulness practices happen in two sort of ways. Yes, there is sort of a rescue aspect to them, which is to say that in the moment that you're feeling the stress, yes, mindfulness can help us. The skills that we develop through mindfulness practices can help us to reduce that stress in the moment, okay? But the second and perhaps more important way that mindfulness works, or the skills that we develop through mindfulness work, is as a sort of accumulative thing, right? And that is to say that the more we do this work, what we're doing is we're physically changing our nervous system and the neural firings of our brains. And so this is creating a new structure that allows for deeper sleep and allows for more, ready and easy, falling into sleep. So it's like a two-pronged attack in a sense, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, the Air Force uses and I'm talking about the Air Force, like the Rangers and like crazy special forces kind of people, right? They use a technique that is very, very similar to what we call the body scan meditation to fall asleep. Because these guys, they might be on a mission and they have 40 minutes to sleep over the next 3 days, so they have to get every bit of those minutes, every last one of those minutes has to be spent sleeping, not trying to fall asleep, right? And so they do, again, it's pretty much just the body scan, which I will teach you. If you call me, I'll teach you this. And, you can fall asleep in, minutes. Like less than minutes, seconds even, as you get into it. So again, sleep is something that is elusive for most people with chronic stress, but it is also the lack of sleep that causes the chronic stress. It's a catch-22 of catch-22s, and it's a kick in the pants, right? But there's something we can do about it. I promise you that. It's not a life sentence here. I promise you that. Diet and exercise, right? Diet and exercise are crucial to the ability to manage stress. And diet and exercise are what, if you're, I've had these days I'm thinking it's a fortune because of this work that I'm looking to step into with first responders. But it so happens that I've spent a lot of time around emergency rooms, and I can very easily picture the paramedic, filling out a chart while he's eating like a cookie or a bag of potato chips or something, right? Y'all are busy. Y'all are busy. I mean, busy. And so one of the first things that goes is the ability to sit down and eat properly. Now, Is our mindfulness practices and the skills that they develop going to change that for you and give you the ability to take a lunch hour that you hear about with the rest of the world? No, of course not. But what we can do is we can, look for those little nooks and crannies in which we can, take even just a minute or two. Okay. And then, of course, also what we do is we really, strictly apply certain practices of eating and exercise to those days where we're off, right? Like do it when you can, so that when you're in the thick of it, some of those skills are going to be able to come through. Okay. Schedule. I laugh, right? All of the first responders right now are laughing when I said that. One of the most effective ways to address stress is with a predictable, and steady and regular schedule of work. Forget it. It's out the window for firefighters. Firefighters, right, and EMTs, they work a 24-hour shift. Usually, I think 3 in a row, maybe 4 in a row. So they're literally at the firehouse for 4 days or 3 days in a row, not off any of those times. It's not like, okay, John's going to sleep now. Let's, he doesn't get bothered for the. No, if you fall asleep and 3 seconds later, that alarm is going, that's your night. That's how it is. Which means, again, I can't change that. Nobody's going to change that for you. But what we can do is we can start to, again, it's about nooks and crannies. It's about moment by moment. What can we do to add some stability? What can we do to add some grounding? And really the work becomes that, right? The work, the practices become the grounding force in your life. It's hard to explain here, and I try to keep these episodes to 30 minutes, so I only have like 4 minutes to cover my last point here. But I'm going to be doing a presentation. I'm going to tell you about that in a second, which will go deeply into all of this. But the last point, the last way in which so anyway, to finish my last point about the schedule, there are ways in which we can add little micro moments of structure that's going to make it feel a little more structured, even within the chaos and the demands of the schedule that you work with. Okay? All right. Last point. Connection. The ability to feel connected, to have a sense of, community with other human beings. Now, this is not something that only first responders need. Every human being on the planet needs this to some degree. Okay, now, yes, there are plenty of people with, anxious and avoidant attachment styles and stuff who feel like, no, I can do it on my own. And they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong, right? And people like to be alone, right? But still, there's a certain ability to make a connection. It's hard to explain here. But the reality is that for first responders, this is not really available, right? Number one, connection takes time. You have to be able to commit to, becoming friends and becoming loved ones and becoming comfortable to build those connections. And number two, you got to find somebody who can handle you as a first responder. I mean, that, I'll tell you right now, none of the women that I've ever dated, none of the people I've ever been real close friends with would have any way to relate to what you do. They would never be able to understand. They wouldn't be able to understand your trauma. They wouldn't be able to understand the demands of the schedule, the commitment that you have, the sort of, otherworldly, focus you have on your work, because it truly is life and death. I remember when I was an advertising executive, we always acted like things were life and death, but it was BS. Your life is life and death. And so there's real challenges to finding these connections. But here's the thing. The connections themselves, the people with whom we connect, that's not the part of connection that helps with stress. It's actually about getting ourselves to a place where we are open to that connection. right? I did a podcast the other day on loneliness, right? And loneliness has nothing to do with being around people. You can be lonely. I mean, and let's face it, firefighter goes out to a bar. He's not spending much time alone, or she is not spending much time alone, right? If they want to meet somebody of the opposite sex or the same sex, they'll go, and that's not a problem, right? But that doesn't heal the loneliness. That doesn't give your nervous system that sense of being connected to the world and to all the people around you. And there are very simple practices you can do starting right now that will cultivate that openness and give you that sense of connection to the world around you, even if there's not an actual person with whom you're becoming intimate and close. But this connectivity, of course, ultimately aids and eases the process of finding that person, with whom you can become intimate, because that's important too, right? All right, so Thursday night. Okay, I was going to do the first one this week, but nobody signed up. I don't think I really did a very good job of promoting it. So I'm going to still show up, see if who else shows up. Maybe and one or two people will. But I have a special opening, right? One of my clients took a 6-week hiatus in our work so that he could join a kickball league on Thursday evenings. So it turns out that I have a free slot in my schedule on Thursday evenings. So for the next, starting tomorrow, and then for the next 4 or 5 Thursdays, I'm going to offer a free presentation workshop for first responders. Okay, it's totally free. Invite as many people as you want, and just show up, okay? And I will be guiding you through some grounding practices, and I'm going to give you 3 different written instructions for practices that are going to cover a lot of what we just talked about here, okay? And this is all for free. Now, yes, do I offer coaching and ongoing teaching? Yes, and I would love to work with as many of you as are ready for that and want to do that. But this is free, 100% free. Okay? So I hope I get to see some of you there. And if not, I wish you well, and I hope you got something out of this podcast. And for all of you regular Showing Up to Life family members out there, thank you so much for indulging us in this this special presentation. I hope you all find this interesting. And one thing I will leave you with, for anyone who's actually still listening here, given everything that I told you here, now one of the greatest practices that I teach people is the practice of compassion when we hear a fire alarm or an ambulance siren going off, right? And I live near a level 1 trauma center here, so we have helicopters coming over our house all the time, right? Going to the hospital over here. So anytime I hear the helicopters, anytime I hear a fire engine, anytime I hear an ambulance, anytime I hear a police car, it's an opportunity where we can pause and we can recognize that in that car, in that ambulance, in that fire truck, in that helicopter, there are men and women who are working just feverishly and tirelessly to save someone's life. And there's the person who's actually injured as well. And there's so much opportunity there for us to hold these people in the compassion of our hearts. And this is an invitation for you, okay? If you're not a first responder, or even if you are, this is an invitation to you to use that. Every time you hear it, just pause for a second. Even if you're in the middle of a phone call, just all it takes is 1 second to say, oh, and recognize that there's somebody in there who's very hurt, and there's somebody else who's in there who's trying to save that person who's hurt. And cultivating that compassion for them is going to be helpful to you as well as to them. All right, everybody. Thanks again for watching and listening. I wish you well. And please let me know what you think about this podcast today. All right? Thanks again. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.